All right, very cool. It's very cool to see everybody is engaging in the chat. And yeah, loving to see that this is a lot of new to P5 folks in here, so we're ready to start this workshop, shall we? Okay. Welcome everyone. So good to see you all. I guess yeah, before I begin, Julien, did you want to start us off with anything?
Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome. So excited that you're here. I wanted to introduce Kit and Amy. They both work for the Processing Foundation, and P5 is a coding language and a huge community um, within the Processing Foundation, outside of the Processing Foundation. Um, and yeah, Kit is P5.js project lead, and Amy is program manager. Um, and yeah, it's a huge community. I've been involved in it for over 10 years. It was how I started coding, so this is really close to my heart. And yeah, P5.js is made up of, the sort of internal staff at the Processing Foundation, but also hundreds of contributors around the world, like yourselves. Even attending this workshop is like a way of contributing and participating in community. So I'm really glad you showed up. And I also just want to reassure the folks who are nervous, if you haven't worked with P5 before or any coding languages, that's totally fine. And this workshop is still for you. So I hope you enjoy. Please feel free to ask any questions or leave comments in the chat. Eric and I are in the chat. We'll be doing our best to answer. So I'm going to hand it over to Kit and Amy, and thank you again for joining us, both of you.
Okay, everyone can hear me all right before I get going? We're good. Great. Welcome to the workshop on creative coding with p5.js. We're so excited to be here. My name is Amy Woodman, and I'm the program manager at Processing Foundation. I'm joined by Kit, the p5.js project lead, who will be leading the majority of our work today. Do you want to just come off mute real quick and say hello?
Yeah, hi. Super nice to be here. Really excited to share some fun pictures with you and maybe see what kind of images you make together.
Lovely. So this workshop is an introduction to creative coding with p5.js, which is an open source JavaScript library that makes coding, visual art, and interactive experiences more accessible to all. We are part of the Processing Foundation, which was established in 2012. We're a nonprofit dedicated to fostering software literacy in the arts and visual literacy in the field of technology. The mission focuses on making art and technology accessible to all, especially marginalized communities. And so our efforts also aim to nurture a community that actively addresses systemic biases in art and tech spaces, in particular those related to gender, race, class, and accessibility. And the foundation supports and distributes a group of related software projects, which includes processing, which is Java-based, p5.js, which is JavaScript, and processing Android. And it facilitates partnerships and collaborations with other organizations and individuals to build a more diverse community and software around software and the art. So p5.js was originally created by Lauren Lee McCarthy and developed by an inclusive community so that we build the tools that we use. p5.js is built around this idea of like low floor, high ceiling, and wide walls. And what I mean by that is that low floors are easy for beginners to get started. Like you can draw a circle with one line of code. This is from a workshop that I ran last week with art teachers who have never written one line of code before, and they've created their own flat games and like paintbrush software last week. So it's very easy to get started. We also have a very high ceiling, which means that it's a powerful enough tool to create very complex or interactive art. These are images from the Museum of the Moving Image in New York City, where Alexandra Jovanik and Marius Watts created art installations there with P5 and processing. We also, to continue the analogy, have very wide walls in this room. So It means that there are multiple options and interests and avenues for interactions for personalization within P5 and processing. These are images from the 2025 fellows that we have that are sort of pushing the boundaries of what's possible in this space. So you see some embodiment work, some projection mapping. People are creating new sound libraries, and this one on the side here is trying to do human-computer interaction in real time with choreography. And we also have an open door policy, which means everyone is welcome to contribute. And we have hundreds, maybe thousands of contributors to just p5.js. In 2019, the p5.js community decided that p5.js will not add any new features except those that increase access. And access here means inclusion and accessibility, more specifically web accessibility for people who are visually impaired or blind. Okay, so today we are going to be exploring how to use shaders with the new 2.0 version of p5.js. It's currently in beta mode. It will be the default by next August, I believe. So 2026 of August. So shaders are visual effects that give you fine-grained control over how your canvas looks. So think of things like glow or glitch, distortion, to name a few. With shaders, it's also possible to transform a shape or multiply it in strange ways. So P5 strands is an experimental feature that we are introducing in 2.0, and our goal is to make shaders accessible as P5.js. So it's like easy to start, easy to imagine further. So we'll show where this experimental feature is at now. We'll also be very interested in your experience today with it. So in fact, we'd actually love your feedback or questions so that we can, make this feature even better. And we hope that you contribute your ideas. So a little bit about shaders is that traditionally they were only accessible to people who knew how to write GLSL, which is like a low-level graphics language that can feel super intimidating. But because we're open source, anyone can build new tools onto P5.js in our ecosystem. And so somebody made P5 strands, P5.strands, and it was originally authored by Luke Plowden, who is now stewarding the project. So prior to this, you could create shaders with GLSL code in P5.js, and there was a lot of contributors who worked on that. But the main takeaway here now is that you can write custom shaders just using JavaScript with P5 strands, and so no GLSL is required anymore. With shaders, you're not just drawing pictures in P5.js anymore. You can write the logic that changes how every pixel behaves, and that process is easier than ever. So there's a slight paradigm shift about like how to draw things with shaders. And the analogy is that if P5.js is like sketching with code, like drawing directly onto a canvas, P5 strands, which is the new shader feature, is more like weaving, where you define a set of rules that determine how threads, the pixels or shapes, cross and blend with one another. So this weaving analogy intentionally connects to the shared history of computing and textiles. Early computers used punch cards, which was inspired by how the 1800s Jacquard loom used punch cards to control weaving patterns automatically. The Jacquard loom was an inspiration for modern computing and the subject of anger and political action of the Luddites, a movement that saw the automated loom as a tool for capitalist control that devalued their weaving craft. So the Luddites, though, were not anti-technology overall. Oh, and you can read more about this in this book by Gavin Muller, which I will add into the chat at some point. But so this idea is that it's like critical. They're critical of the sort of destructive of technologies that they recognize as threatening their livelihoods. So one interesting parallel here with the Luddites is that the critical engagement with technology is both possible and pretty common, especially in open source tools, because open source tools are in a state of collective creation. They can be a space for considering and discussing the role of technology in society and of creating alternatives to those technologies that can cause harm. Okay, so going back from the history lesson, is that creative coding with p5.js can be an introduction to this kind of open source community space, and the new shader feature embraces the technological history of textiles and computing and the metaphor. And it's not like drawing on paper, it's about defining color, texture, shape, and motion algorithmically like a loom would. So that's how we have to think about shaders. Okay, the goal of this workshop is to help you build your own comfort with code, color, and motion, and how they all work together. And we hope that this gives you the creative tools to experiment and share your own shader-based artwork. I'm going to pass it over to Kit now. I will be on Discord. I will be in the chat, sharing my own. I'm going to be coding along and sharing along with you all. So yeah, without further ado, here we go.
All right, thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for the intro with the history of kind of textile and fabric and computing, because I think this is something that's really important to acknowledge. And also all the images on the slide right now were created in the process of creating these tutorial slides. So we'll go from working with kind of the basic shapes and drawing to working with P5 strands. So the parallel that I'll keep kind of bringing up is this idea of when you draw directly a box or a circle or a square. And if you are thinking about weaving those things, you don't directly draw. You have to think about how the threads weave together. And so with that, I'll ask you first to come to the p5.js web editor. So this is a tool. You can sign in. If you don't sign in, it's not going to save your work. So if you want to be able to save your work, please make sure to sign in. And we'll start there. Okay, so if everybody has the P5 editor open, something that AB, that's right, if you sign in, you can share your sketches. Throughout this workshop, we'll also be able to export high resolution images that are created in your sketches. So you can also paste those in the chat. I would be so excited to see them. So something Amy mentioned is that P5 strands is a feature in P5.js 2.0, which is a new version. You'll notice here in the P5.js editor, this is an initial blank sketch. I can play it. It's creating a basic canvas of 400 by 400 pixels. And it has this little toggle here to go to library management. And so I'll ask everybody to go to the newest version of 2.03. And so we'll go from there. Okay. And by the way, after all this, we'll share also all the code. So first of all, we're going to stay in the WebGL canvas, and we're going to make it a little bit smaller. So to start with, please write kind of like a couple of these lines, and especially those of you who are new to coding, I'll invite you a couple of times to go through and try and read this code as a text. So here we've created a canvas element, 300 by 300 pixels. Then we've colored the background. And here I'll always use three colors to three numbers to describe color. Here, 255 for red, green, and blue. And we'll keep coming back to red and green and blue channels. If you do web development, you know that there are many ways to describe colors. For the context of our work, let's keep using red, green, and blue. And here we've created a rectangle. When we're in WebGL mode, the center or 0, 0 coordinate is in the middle. So this instruction says, make me a rectangle starting -150, -150. So in the top left corner, and all the way to the bottom to 300, 300. So we have a rectangle. Let's add another shape to this. So there are some functions in P5 that are built in that make it very easy to do certain things, such as create a rectangle. And so somebody was asking, why should I use P5.js? And there are any particular language or library, what it's going to do is it's going to make some things very easy to do and some things harder to do. So if you're deciding whether or not to use something, the question is, what would you like to use it for? And is it going to make it easier or harder? And so after this rectangle, we've created this other shape. And here, oh, well, I want to make a square. I've identified that it has these vertices. Vertex is the kind of the corner of this shape, but I want to close it here. And as in any language, there's a particular syntax. So here I'll give lots of examples, but in general, you can find the reference for P5 at the p5js.org website. There's the beta website, which contains the 2.0 reference. So I won't be showing this too much, but this is where all the kind of core information is. I'll just show the examples here. So please make sure that you have this somehow running. Do ask questions, and we'll take it from there. So in addition to that, one thing that I mentioned is that we're going to work with this very small canvas, 300 by 300, because that allows us to be really experimental, make things that maybe are not very efficient on a larger image, but then create images that are higher resolution. But first, let's add this additional function. So what have we here? We have 3 different blocks to the code. We have the setup, which is something that happens one time. We have the draw loop, which is something that happens repeatedly, but it doesn't really matter right now because nothing is being animated. And then we have something that happens when a key is pressed. So here, when I press this key, any key, you'll notice that I have lots of downloads from this. So I'll paste this code into the chat too. And next up, we're going to start to really think about colors. As I mentioned here, one of the things that we're going to keep doing is thinking about red, green, and blue. Now, you probably have heard this like red, green, and blue is about how light combines versus something like cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, something that's used in printers. And in this case, we will be painting mostly with light. So to start with, all the kind of colors are defined by 3 numbers between 0 and 255. So I would invite you to experiment with changing these numbers and trying to build an intuition. So for example, if you add this line no fill, you're going to be able to see the background behind the rectangle. So what the instructions do is that some instructions state a drawing action, like make me the purple background. And some actions, some of the code says, well, next time you do something, do it like this. And this will become important later. So aside from creating the background color, I'm also going to color the rectangles in different ways, and I'm going to add an outline. So follow along with this one. Okay, so here I've created an additional, I've made the middle one a little bit darker. And the one thing I can do is also add a 4th channel, which is opacity. So that's also between 0 and 255, where 255 is going to be completely opaque. But if I make it less, if I make it something like 50, it'll just combine with the color that's behind it. And same for this. And so what does this allow us to do? This allows us to try to think about color combination. As a last kind of like piece of this, other than fill, there's another piece of color here, which is, if you look at this, it has the black outline. So in order to change the outline, we'll add another set of commands to change the stroke color and width. So this is to say that you can use very seemingly simple commands like changing the borders of something to create rather noticeable visual effects. So I'll copy this here, and the invitation is to take a little bit of time now to experiment with colors. Oh yeah, thanks for sharing the additive color diagram. That's super helpful. So now what you have in this sketch is the ability to be able to put in different colors. There are a couple of different lines you can do this, line 12, line 9, line 15. So any of these 4 numbers, that's red, green, blue, and alpha or opacity, They can be any number between 0 and 255. And try different numbers. You can use online color pickers, or you can just try things out and see how it works, see what it looks like. And once you are you can also change the weight of the outline itself, which can create this sort of more overlapping vibe. And at that point, when you press any key, an image is saved. So if you want to share the images that you create, your little quilt blocks, that's kind of like our little theme. We're going to be sharing squares here. Please do share in the chat. In general, you can use hex values and a lot of different, actually, there's a lot of new color modes in p5.js 2.0 as well. But later on, we'll also be using the red, green, and blue channels in one of the shaders. So I think it's like, if you want to get an intuition for how these colors combine, that could be a really cool exercise. Okay, so I think it would be great if you wanted to share. Oh, awesome. Very cool. And by the way, you can change any other number. So earlier on, there's always a little bit of a worry with code about like, okay, well, is it math? Well, kind of. There is some math, but anytime you see a number in code, I would just invite you to change it, make it a little bigger, make it a little smaller, see what that does. I'd call that research. So for example, let's take one number and make it something different. So I just changed the size of my rectangle by making it, rather than -150, -150, 300, 300. You can just also keep going with that. And you can get all sorts of patterns because of the way that the light interacts. By the way, when you later on start sharing these images, if you want to include your Instagram handle, then we're also happy to share that online in like little quilts together. No pressure at all, but if you include your Instagram handle, we can do that. Okay, cool. Next, we're going to change one of these functions, which is the key pressed function that's been saving this stuff, to save the high resolution version of this image. Creative coding can be many things. You can include P5 sketches in a website and so on. You can make these interactive games. But one way to use creative coding is part of like a pipeline to create sound, or video, or image. And today, that's how we're using that. So the new code block includes a couple of additions, which is this updated key pressed function and set attributes to anti-alias. So it's a little bit complicated, but you don't have to edit this at all. This is something that you can use to up the resolution of your sketch. So even if you're working with 300 by 300 pixels, notice you change here the pixel density in the key pressed function. And then you draw a much higher resolution image. This way, everything that you do later on with shaders, it can be very fast in the browser when you're experimenting, and nice and high resolution when you export it. And you can also increase the pixel density in that. Okay, how did I create the rounded angles for the rect? That's actually one of the fun artifacts of playing around um, with opacity and borders. This is one of the favorite things that I like to do, is like kind of misuse things and see what happens. So what I've done is I've created an extremely thick border. It's kind of uncontrollable. It's kind of just going to do whatever you want it to do. So because of the way that stroke on a rectangle in WebGL 2D mode works, it's gonna be around. Like that's it. So there's a really interesting way that the material itself comes up, and I think I really love working with fabric and embroidery, and I think that's something that's like the material and the medium kind of dictating what comes out is a really fun part of the exploration for me. But yeah, thanks for the question. Let me know if I miss anything at any point. And we're gonna start to get a little a little more complex now, but more complex maybe in this material sense. Let's go back to the editor and start from scratch, and we'll keep building it up every single time. Anytime you make a new sketch, change the version. Oh, amazing. That's really cool. Like if you want to share the code for that, I think that would be amazing. I'm sure people would love to see how you did that. Um, so what I'm doing now is that now I'm trying to create a scene that is 3D that I can move around and create different shapes with. So here, I've created this weird shape with a sphere, size 150, and a box. And by adding an orbit control, I'm able to manipulate it. That way we can move it around and touch it and see what it does. So now there's some like, why would I put a sphere there? Well, a sphere is another thing that has some really interesting artifacts that you can play with. A sphere, okay, well, 150 is the size. Okay, it has two other parameters if you look at the reference. It has a detail parameter, and so I'm going to make the detail really low in both dimensions. And now I have this really strange object that's not quite a rectangle that we're going to next light up and color. So first, I had this white background. I added a light, an ambient light that is 0, 0, 0, which means no light. It's the object is now completely dark on a white background. You can change these, by the way. You can make these any color. I will use black on white for now. And then I'm going to start to add a directional light to light this object up. So I can use the mouse to manipulate this object to zoom in and out, and then I can add this light, which exists, and this is what makes it kind of purple. It's a mix of red and blue. That's how I know it's going to be purple. And it's coming kind of like a bit, this is like defining the direction of it. And so it's going to be the minus 300 is like closer to your face. So you can experiment with where kind of it ends up based on what the numbers are. So in that sense, I think this is one of those things where it's really nice to build the intuition, but to try out a couple of different colors and a couple of different directions. So now we have something that has a couple of different colors going on. One of the reasons that I use this like low polygon sphere is because it has this really nice color and gradient, and I like gradients. But you can explore a couple of different other shapes here too. You can add a different like box in the middle of it, for example. You can change the size of this box. So now I'm going to put back a couple of things into this code, which is the output part. As well as some additional kind of keyboard-based rotation stuff to help us make our quilt blocks. So here, if you want to dig into it, you really can. What this is going to do is that every time I press space, it's going to change the rotation of this. I have to also define kind of the rotation and then use it. I can't just change the rotation and then not use it. So here, the part of this that's actually going to change the rotation is this bit. So that's not optional. So now when I press space, it's changing rotation. And notice that the actual lights don't change because the lights stay the same. But then instead of having to move it around, I can do it programmatically and create some really strange things. You can always clip into these, which can also be really fun. And we'll keep working on this. And let me just share that code. Now, what would be really nice to do here is for these colors to be a little bit more interactive. So we're going to add mouse interaction to like use this color painting technique. Because we're in 3D, we always need 3 coordinates for everything. And in p5.js, again, like in any library or tool, there's always the things that come easily and the things that are a little bit trickier. And in p5.js, there's these tools like mousex and mousey. They're usually working with the way that the canvas defines coordinates. So they start at 0. So because the WebGL kind of drawing has 0 in the middle, we have to do this kind of this a little bit of extra math to adjust. So like take half of the width to the left and then use the mouse coordinate. And then same with height. And then we'll have the z-coordinate be at 0 and just see what happens. And here the directional lights are always, this way you can see it. The directional light here as a syntax, so we can like go through and read it like any other line. Okay, so here we place a directional light using the color of this, in this case, the purple, and we place it at this location, X, Y, and Z, where the negative Z is closer to the face, to the camera. So let's add one single light first. And let's just use the wherever the mouse is at. So now, yeah, the main reason I like this sphere thing is because of this kind of avoidance thing that it happens with the Z coordinate. So you can use many other shapes too. So here it follows the mouse. If you go to the reverse part, it's going to not quite follow the mouse as intuitively. Okay, how can we make this a little bit more interesting? Well, let's add 2 lights, one that's kind of following the opposite of the mouse. So here I'm adding something that's like slightly offset. So it's not quite the opposite yet, but it's close enough that when we get to this like little cusp point, it creates some really interesting potential for overlap or non-overlap. Or I can do actual opposite. So now I've added like a couple of different colors, and I can light up my shape in a couple of different ways. I could press space to change the configuration, but because it's symmetrical right now, that doesn't like look like much. So yeah, so maybe take the next kind of minute or so to maybe play around with different shapes. You can change the size of this box. You can change the size or the resolution of the sphere. You can change the lights, their number, their shape, shade, their location, and so on. So I'll share the sketch in a moment, but I am super happy to answer questions and to see what you get up to. If somebody creates a heart shape, that would be really cool. Actually, I think there's a couple of different ways to think about it. I've introduced kind of the sphere shape and the box shape, but there's also a cone shape that might be interesting. So those are all the shapes that are there, so that are like basic shapes that you could use. To change background color, you can also change this. Whoop, that's not where I am. I'm here. So I have ambient light, and that's going to give the initial color to your object sort of, and then you have the background. So if you want to change the background color, that'll make it sort of look a pinkish. Oh, matches my shirt. That's why I did it. That was on purpose. All right, how's everybody doing? If anybody's having big questions or challenges right now, please ask them, because the next step after this is starting with the shaders. Keep in mind that like you can also create like 3D geometries. For example, like the second, so I'm looking at the heart examples that were shared in the chat. If you want the second one where you have like a cone and spheres, you could also do that in 3D. So very, very similar position using sphere and cone. Nice. Also, if you load objects, you do that. It's a little bit out of scope here. Okay, cool. Yes, you can also share the errors you get. So when you have an error that says like cannot draw stroke on ellipsoids with more than 24 detail X or 24 detail Y, that's actually about the sphere line. So it's this line here. The sphere command will create a sphere of size 150, and this is the detail X and Y. If these numbers are bigger than 24, and I'll explain why in a second, I will create an error like this. Technically, it'll still kind of do stuff. It'll just like not draw one of the things as you would expect. In this case, it does actually draw it. Mainly that because that detail defines like how smooth the object is, and based on performance, sometimes it's either ignored or not drawn or slows things down. So when I write here 4 and 2, that means that is what makes that super low poly. And if I want to make it an actual sphere, I can make it much higher. Okay, so far as a short kind of midpoint or partway point recap, we did a little bit of stuff with 2D, with a little bit of stuff with 3D, and now we're going to stay with 3D and add a shader. Because we don't have that much time left, this is one of those things where everyone is invited to experiment with colors, experiment with shapes. I love everything that's happening in the chat. But I'll come back to kind of like some of the examples with P5 strands. So far, everything we're doing is drawing. Everything that we're doing says, I want a shape in this canvas. The idea of a shader is that it's something that operates less like drawing and more like weaving, where you have to think about how things come together. So the first shader we're going to look at is one that's going to be used as a filter to change pixel level color information. So I'm going to paste this code, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take apart parts of it to show kind of how it works. So this is still doing the same thing that we were doing before, but now it's got a really wild color effect going on with it as well. Why is that part happening? Well, let's take it away first. So here we have our original draw, very similar to what we had before. We have this mouse-controlled colors, a sphere, and a box. And here's what that looks like. That's no shader. And then I add a shader in using the filter function. And the shader that I've drawn is one that I've created myself here. So this is the let displace colors that creates it at the top level. I've added here some links that you can refer to if you want to dig deeper into this. But what is this going to do? This is going to, at every single pixel, so this is not drawing anymore. It's not creating a rectangle. It's saying at every pixel, take the coordinates of that pixel, find some other coordinates nearby, and actually split it by color. So take the red coordinate of something that's like a little closer to the center from me. Take the green coordinate of something that's farther from the center from me. And then combine a new color based on this split. The result will be something like this chromatic aberration effect, where you have each of the color channels split into different parts. This is really fun to clip into. And again, it still maintains this like light interaction from the mouse. And if I play it, if I once again use the spacebar, I can page through the different shapes. All of you who tried different shapes, who made different shapes, you can change the shape right here. If you change the shape in this instead of this here in box, you can use any other shape. There's some really cool code in the chat that's using a for loop, I think. Yes. So there's a code that's using for loops to create multiplication. I'm going to show you how to multiply an object without using a for loop at all. So this is not to say you should or shouldn't use a for loop, or you should or shouldn't use a shader. Awesome, thank you. Do share that. I love the glitchy stuff that this generates too. This is really cool. And also update your colors. So if you're choosing how to kind of do how to multiply different objects, the question becomes, what is it that you want to, what kind of effect do you want? So next, we're going to take this shape or any other shape that you created and multiply it. Before we can do that, we have to create a coherent geometry. So the way we started with start shape, end shape, vertices, we can also build up a geometry and make it all one thing. I'll paste it in a moment. So here I have this block geometry. This is my sphere, this is my box, and here I'm using some other variables that I'm going to define in a second. And then I draw that model. I'm also going to remove this filter for now so that we can see what is going on. And this is not going to run yet because the blocks and other variables are not there yet. To start with, we're going to just have one of them with a margin of some sort of block size. This doesn't look very different. This looks like another one of these types of objects. And now we're going to start to be able to multiply it. So something that I've done here is that I've added a new shader that is not the original. So like we had already the displaced colors. We're not using that, but it's there. And we made a new one that's looking very similar, but acting rather on the instances or the different objects. Right now, there's still just one object. And then instead of drawing box and sphere every time here, I'm creating this block geometry, and then I'm drawing that multiple times based on the variable grid size. So at the top of the sketch, I can also increase the grid, meaning add more rows or columns. And this has really wide margin, so I really have to zoom in to see these things. So I'll decrease that.
Okay, Kit is unresponsive, so let's see. You all can keep playing around here. I will copy in some code that I was working on, though it wasn't the same as what Kit was just working on, but just so you have it. If you want to play around with that one.
Hey, what's up, Amy? I'm jumping in here. I'm Sunny from Codédex. I'm jumping in here
Oh,
just,
great.
you
Okay.
know. By the way, folks, maybe feel free to grab a coffee while we wait for Kit to come back. And maybe what we can do for now, Amy, is maybe I can just ask you some questions about processing foundation or, is that okay? Just to kill some time?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I also see that Sheen is, who is the co-executive director, is also hanging out in the audience. So I might tap on them too to help me out. But yeah, happy to answer any questions I can.
Cool, cool, cool. By the way, where are you based, Amy? Which state? Oh,
Yeah, I'm right now. I'm in Portland, Oregon.
nice, very nice, very nice. Cool. And then I think I saw that you just joined the team relatively recently.
Yeah, I just started 2 months ago.
Cool. How's that been? And also, can you just share, like, I mean, from the outside perspective, like, how big is Processing Foundation? What, like, how many people are working on P5? Can you just share a little bit about, the inner workings?
Yeah, happy to. It's a tiny team. We are like, I think a group of 9, maybe, 9.5 or 8.5. So, yeah, Kit is the only one maintaining p5.js. And so they are, um, you know, the ones that are looking at, Kit is back. Fantastic.
Welcome back.
Yeah, so a small and mighty team is the takeaway there. Very, very, yeah, lots of work, fast pace, good stuff, huge community, but I've been loving the job so far.
Heck yeah.
All right, Kit, we were just killing time while we were waiting you to join back in.
Cool. Welcome back, Kit.
Sorry about that. Did you manage, like, I feel like the timing was like almost all right. I think I got through at least introducing the instance shader, right?
Yes, and I think folks actually appreciated a little bit of time to just tinker with their own projects. So it's been cool to see the chat filling up with cool projects. But yeah, go ahead and take it away from
It's
there.
amazing. Yeah, like Anything that you make here, also, if you tag p5.js on Instagram, I am going to see that. And someone says the space filter shader is not defined. Check your version. GLSL shaders have been supported in p5 for a while, but this idea of writing it directly in JavaScript, it's not like, it's still an experimental feature. There's a lot of ongoing work on it. I'm the only one at Processing Foundation who's maintaining this, but the team of maintainers is actually 4 people. There's more than 20 stewards of different areas, including Luke and Dave Baguric, who originally worked on this P5 feature. And so I'll leave you also with kind of the links to our GitHub stuff, because I think that it's really, P5.js is such a like massive community project that's been going on for a while. If you want to be involved in that process directly, that's super, super welcome. So I'll pop some links in there. It's a beginner-friendly tool. And so thanks so much for trying things out and for energy today. It's really nice to see all the vibes in the chat. That was really cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I know we're technically out of time, but do we have maybe 5 minutes for a brief Q&A with community if folks have anything that they want to ask? Is that okay?
I'm totally happy with that. Like, I'm happy to stay here for a little longer.
Cool. Yeah, I wanted to open up the floor for community to ask about p5.js or processing or open source. I know we had a lot of questions in the beginning that were a little bit more like foundational for why learners should start, learning p5.js. Obviously you can make these amazing things. And I have a lot of my own reasons, but if you have an answer to that sort of for people today of like, why get into this now? What's feeling urgent about it? It feels kind of urgent to me. So, yeah.
I feel like this is, coming back to Amy's introduction of like the history of technological advances. Always like anytime something new happens, it feels like it's happening to us and like at us and so on. And the spirit of open source is to kind of more take the step to be part of the community that builds things for ourselves, rather than kind of getting trapped in like a cycle of being a consumer of this or that, and of feeling really ambivalent about it. I can't remember the last time that I had a conversation where somebody felt like unambiguously happy with technology. I think that there's a lot of complex emotions about it. And one thing that I think is true with open source and with creative coding is that there are so many different practices within this. Like, this is just one type of thing that you can do with creative code or with P5. But there are so many practices, and there are so many people using these tools and these practices to kind of understand and interrogate and improve their own relationship to technology, and to improve society's relationship to technology. And I think that that is increasingly important, to feel some degree of agency and to act on some degree of agency. Um, so I think that's part of it. Also, one of the things that I hope that, became something that you noticed is that with code, you can make this really tiny change somewhere and it makes a huge impact, right? So like in the last one where you multiply stuff, you change one line to be 50 instead of 5, and the scene is now totally different, and you can play with that scene in different ways. Or you have one shape, when it's just one thing of it, but when you multiply it and they interact with each other in different ways. It's very different from other media where maybe like there's more of a one-to-one correspondence between how much change you make and how different it looks. And having that intuition is I think, a really fun and interesting thing to build. It's the foundation of computational thinking. So outside of creative work, like I think that that is one of the biggest parts of what makes computational thinking a separate thing, where you think abstractly. You think like, how can I make a very small gesture and make a big systemic kind of change? How can I imagine that, and how can I design that? So I think that's a really, really good skill to be able to practice, and creative coding is a way to practice that skill.
Amazing. Yeah, I think part of why I started, well, when I started coding, I started with processing because P5 hadn't been made quite yet, or it was about to be created. But I think for me, it was like motivating to be able to do things instantly when I was struggling so much to make anything in other languages. Like I needed something that would let me see what I was doing immediately and feel smart because I was able to make it work and not get super demotivated. Um, there's a question in the chat. For people who are still shaky with coding itself, what are things I can still jumpstart and help
Oh, go ahead.
along with improving my coding skill as well? I'm very interested in your cause, open source education, open door, low bar. I know that Amy linked to the contributors. I want to let you both answer, but I do want to say like anyone in this call can become a contributor to p5.js, as I said in the beginning, and people are really friendly, and you can just like start by fixing little things, making pull requests. And there's a great guy that Amy linked to that will help you do that. I think it can help you feel empowered and in a similar way to the like instant kind of making with P5. But I would love to know if either of you have a different or more specific answer.
Yeah, just speaking to that all contributors link that I had just shared, I think that the really kind of radical way of thinking about contribution, this like very broad way where it could be simply that you are reporting a bug or you are, putting in an issue or you are doing some UX research for us, or there are all sorts of ways that you can contribute, and even it spans into kind of like education resources and documentation. So I would encourage anybody, even those who are feeling kind of new to coding, but are very interested in this world, to look into all of the different ways that contribution is acknowledged. And also your GitHub, account can be, or like a profile can be linked to our all contributors page. It's a very open door policy that we have got.
Nuclear Neil asks, will the code with the multiplicative grid maker be posted somewhere? Yeah, I think we can provide code from this workshop as well. Thank you for pasting that in. Yeah, so I think we're at time, but this was amazing. And I feel really happy and really inspired that you both made it today. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for sticking around for a little bit after. Yeah, please tag us, tag p5xjs on Instagram or us at codedex.io. Please share what you made. And yeah, stay tuned for more. Yeah, this was so fun.
Yeah, we had a so cool seeing everybody's projects. Can't wait to see you all on socials to see what else you can make.
I'm just staying on because the little thank you comments are so cute, and I always want to like let everyone say their piece before I end the stage.
Yeah, you can't leave anyone left on typing.
Yeah, I'm like, no, if there's typing, like, what am I
Yes.
gonna do? Not let them finish their sentence?
Multiple people are typing.
Yeah. But yeah, it was great to see you, Kit, and it's great to meet you, Amy. I'm so excited that you're here and hope to collaborate with you both again.
Yeah, so happy to be here. It's just like it's the gift that keeps giving. All of the incredible people that I've already gotten to meet in the past 2 months, it's just been it's been filling my cup. I wish I could individually like every single person's comment in here. I've just been loving how interactive everyone is.
I know, I feel like I've been trying to put glitch heart reactions on everything, and I'm like, I haven't even gotten through half of them.
Yeah, this was also my first time doing anything on Discord like this besides just like posting stuff. So Yeah, I don't know. I learned a lot today.
I know I'm always learning tech check tips from Eric. Like every time I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a new thing that I should be doing. All right.
All right.
The typing is basically over except Eric, so I think it's time to end, but thank you again, everybody. Yeah, see you online. Please tag us. Bye, y'all. Thanks again.
And